Welcome everyone. My name is Tiffany. I'm a Tipsy Artist. Today we are painting an adorable scarecrow for the fall season. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've got all of our setup here. Your painting kit that is available at tipsyartist.com has all these supplies here for you. And I have a little business card out, but oh well. A little off today, but y'all get it. I'll put it in the description. Again, that's tipsyartist.com for all the supplies. And so we have our paint out. I've got the model visual here, our brushes, napkins, water, the Sharpie that comes with the kit, the pencil, a little bit of paint started here for you, and our canvas, our tracing paper, transfer paper, and our traceable here. So let me talk about our brushes here too. This is our little family of brushes. We have our mama brush, and then our little buddy, and then our little bit. All right, so that gives us a great start. Let me go ahead and talk about the transfer process here first. So I've got my canvas underneath, and I have worked ahead. That's why you see this is finished out here, but I'm going to talk about the process of transfer. So your transfer paper comes with your kit, and this is the traceable. I always secure it with tape right up here at the top, and it is just completely even with the top of the canvas there and just centered. And when I place the transfer paper down, I want to make sure that the dark side, the dark shiny side, faces the canvas. That will transfer the impression of the image to the canvas. Then I play the traceable, I place that on top. And so you can actually just tape the transfer paper down first, then center this here, and then tape up here at the top. But leave all of this free. The sides are completely free of tape so that you can lift that during the process and check your work to make sure that everything gets transferred before you actually remove this, because it is pretty much nearly impossible to line this back up again. So because you can't see it, there's no way to do that. So again, just make sure leave this all free and liftable. That'll make the process a lot easier. So once we have this secure, then I take the pencil and I go ahead, and every time you see a line, I just make another line right over it. You're just tracing right over all the line work that I've already provided for y'all. So that's done, and that will leave an image on the canvas. It will look a lot like, well, exactly like pencil. Basically, that's going to be your starting point. So you can certainly just leave that as your starting point. I prefer to take the permanent marker, and I always include this in the kit. I take this and I go over all the line work. To me, it just makes the process a lot easier for beginners. So that way it does bleed through the paint. It also does a lot of fun shortcuts for you in terms of like the darkening of the black with the eyes. And so that's really nice, or the crow detail work that gives you a nice starting point. So I think that's a nice way to start. Again, easier for beginners, so I go ahead and do that. And I think y'all will enjoy that too. So that's going to be my start. So you can see I've worked ahead. I went ahead and did all of my tracing in advance, and then I took my permanent marker and went over every line. So it does take a little bit of time on the front end to do that, but again, very helpful so that your painting is just really, easy breezy, fun to do, because that's the point of all this. We want to make sure that you have a really relaxing, fun experience. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start to do a little bit of our mixing. We're going to start with our background first. So I've got, I'm reusing old paint kits that I have, but basically yours will be brand new. It looks a lot like this. And so we're going to go ahead and start with some titanium white. We're going to start with that in the background. And a little helpful hint, when you do go ahead and unscrew these at the beginning, there will be a silver foil lining up at the top. You're going to have to remove that on each one. And anytime you're done using the paint, always go back and recap. So again, acrylic paint is, I love it. It's my favorite medium to use, but it does dry very quickly. So you don't want to be careless with leaving these little tubes here uncapped. You're going to come back in and recap those, secure that paint. It'll last a lot longer for you. You're going to get many uses out of one kit of paint here to help you make more than just this one painting. So take good care of those, make them last. And then let's go back to our background colors. So again, I said we were going to start with some titanium white, also some Mars black. Will be a nice mix in there. We're going to mix up a little bit of some gray, and then I'm going to add a little bit of some primary cyan blue as well. Place a little bit of this on my mixing plate over here. And I'm going to add a little bit of warmth here to this as well. So let's see here. Got some cadmium yellow, but let's do a little bit of some cadmium yellow. A little touch of that. A little pea size amount, all that is needed. All right, so I'm going to start with my mama brush here, and let's go ahead and place it into the water just a little bit, because you'll have a brand new brush and you want to make sure that it's nice and flexible. So you add a little bit of moisture to the brush. Then I'm going to go ahead and pat it dry on the napkins where it's just moist and very flexible to use. Now I'm going to take the same brush. We're going to go ahead and just use it kind of like a big scoop here, like a spatula, and just pick up a nice big dollop of the white. Push that off to the side. We're going to add a tiny little touch. Just going to dip the corner of the brush into the blue. We're going to add that into the white. That's going to make a very light blue. And then let's just barely touch the black. Super tiny touch there. Black is very overpowering. You can see how that just took it right to gray almost immediately. Got a little bit of yellow on there. That's okay. A little bit of warmth is kind of nice in there. So that's a nice color to work with. I'm also going to add just another little touch of blue over here to the side, because I want some of this to have a little bit more of a prominent blue in that background. So that's going to be nice to play with. All right, so we have some fun colors to go back and forth with to create some of this background here. Let's place this off to the side. And we're going to go ahead and start to place the color in the background. So I'm going to start to work in like little vertical strokes. You can see how we're getting a little bit of a dry brush there. You can dip into the water. That's the nice thing about working with the canvas flat, is it allows you to work with your water. You don't have to worry about paint drips coming into your design. So it helps you blend the paint and extend the paint over the surface. A little bit of water with the paint really helps that paint really flow into the pores of the canvas. Add a little bit of water here. Again, vertical strokes. I'm also going to touch into a little bit of white as we go. Now I'm going to brush in some horizontal strokes. I'm going to kind of vary those back and forth. Be kind of playful with it. And again, this is just playful strokes that go horizontal and then vertical. And then I'm going to touch into some of this that has a bit more of that primary yellow in here. That has a creamy effect. And I'm going to go ahead and push that in. Vertical and horizontal. So this is a fun, playful abstraction here in the background. Now we're going to touch into a little bit of white. And then as I go ahead and paint this on, the other thing I'm going to be mindful of is when I'm finishing out my brush strokes and I want them to have a nice feathery look, light transitions of brush strokes over the surface area, I'm going to change how I hold the brush. So instead of having a more forceful hand and that brush pointed towards the canvas and that handle coming up, I'm going to change over to holding the brush more parallel to the canvas. This will give me a light, gentle hand. Allows more of that paint to just kind of rest right on the surface. Work in some of those softly blended transition strokes back and forth, vertical versus horizontal. You just keep working that back and forth between the two. You'll notice I'm working back and forth with the white quite a bit. That's very helpful in there. Just a nice look. So it's alternating between the colors of this really pretty kind of slate blue. And we've got this kind of creamy taupe color, and we have our white. So we're going to be kind of rotating between those colors and working those all into the background. Now, here's one thing that's really nice. You want to definitely add a little bit more water here, make it a bit more translucent, the paint. And you can actually do a slight overpaint here. Again, make sure you have enough water to make the paint a little bit more translucent. This is much easier for beginners. It doesn't force you to do that tedious cut-in work. But you do have to be very careful about how translucent your paint is, because if your paint is far too thick and you have enough water, you're going to cover up your lines. Even though I will say the beautiful thing about this permanent marker, it will have a tendency to bleed through even some very thick painterly strokes, and you'll still be able to see it. But just in case, I definitely add a lot of caution here, and that add a lot of water to your mix here on your plate. Make the paint a bit more translucent, and that allows you that wonderful ability to overpaint just slightly without the tedious cut-in work. It also allows you to be more continuous with your feathering, blending of back and forth, vertical versus horizontal. So you don't interrupt the flow of that, because that feels really good and it looks really good when you do that soft blending back and forth. And I can just continue on with this around that hat. And I'll do this all the way around. Again, just lots of alternating between all the colors that we mixed. Add that water to it. You can keep the paint a lot thicker out in these sections where you're not worried about interfering with trace lines. But then again, as you get closer to the work that you did with your trace, and pick up more water, make that paint a bit more translucent, and then do your painterly strokes around that. And then I'm also turning my brush more over to the side. Doing light strokes of that white over the top, and then shifting back and forth between horizontal, vertical, back and forth. So we're going to do this to cover all of our background here. So that's looking really pretty. And we're going to take that all the way around here too. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more paint. So I'm going to pick up a little dollop of the white right here. A little touch of the blue. A little touch of the yellow. Let's add a little bit of water there. Tiny, just barely touch that black. Actually, touch a little bit too much, but it's very gray. It just gives me a wide range of colors to push into. A really pretty blending in here. Got a bit more white and that match what we were doing earlier. So let's continue on with this. And just have fun with it. If you want to do cut in, you certainly can. So that will look a little bit more like holding the brush like a pencil. That'll give you more precision and control around those shapes. And then you can go back over to your side hold with more of a parallel hold to the canvas. Feather out those strokes out from the shape. Also using your smaller brushes, Little Bit and Little Buddy can help you do cut-in work if you prefer that, it can certainly come in a little bit smaller. You can work in on your cutting work that way. And then just continue working with your bigger mama brush into the background once you get your cutting work done. Either way, on that approach, I'll show you with both techniques what you prefer. And smaller brushes doing the cutting work. Then we follow up with Mama. I'm just going to finish out the background. To pull in a lot of white when I do the feathering strokes, vertical versus horizontal here. And you can see a little bit of dry brush happening here. You can always add a tad more water to that. It'll help that paint flow into the pores of the canvas. Add a little bit more white. And gentle strokes back and forth. Right, beautiful. Okay, so we've got a great start there on our background. Rinsing out our mama brush. So basically what I'm doing here, firm pressure, spin the brush round and round and round. That will help release the paint. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our next big shape of color. Now, as we get into the detail work, I am more meticulous about cutting work. So in the background, I'm a little bit more free and loose, but in the detail work, we're going to start to be a bit more careful. So we're going to use smaller brushes and work into those tiny spaces with a bit more precision. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with this lovely, this is kind of a cloth look of the Scarecrow. So I'm going to use some Cadmium Yellow here. And there's probably a little touch of brown in there too. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of brown. So in this particular kit, it doesn't come with a pure brown. We're going to have to mix that. So we're going to use some Cadmium Orange and black. Use a little pea size amount of the Cadmium Orange. Let's check out this magic. So I got a dollop of the orange, which is the black. Let's mix those equal parts there. That's going to give us a dark brown. Looks very black in the monitor, but it looks brown. So I have more orange to show you a more chocolate brown. There we go. Okay. And you can continue to warm this up with more orange, or let's add a little bit of white. That's really going to be interesting. It's also nice. It really warms up that brown. That's looking good. So we're just going to use this to kind of help us mix, and we'll definitely use this to pull into the paint more and more, but that's nice to have here in the background. Out. Let's go back to this lovely Cadmium Yellow. Take a clean dollop of that. nice amount of white. We're going to mix this, lighten this up a little bit, more white. We want that even lighter, very, very light. It's just very heavy at this point. You can see how that's getting a lot closer. Oh, nice. And you can also feel how we have a little bit of the brown that we might work in for sections of that. So I can definitely add a little bit of water here. We get that smile. We're going to preserve that. This beautiful creamy color will just paint right over the top. It'll bleed through. But definitely want to avoid the eyes. Want to keep those eyes just the way they are. And we're going to be careful leaving around the eyes. And if you do have a little bit of overpaint like I just did there, no worries. We have our permanent marker. When all the paint dries, then you can come back with your permanent marker and fine tune any black line work that you need to do. But again, word of caution on that, you cannot use the permanent marker until your paint is completely dry, or it will just destroy your permanent marker instantly and render it useless. So careful with your supplies. Just again, tip is wait for the paint to completely dry, and then you can use that permanent marker quite freely to do lots of light touch of work. It is a lovely trick for beginners. We're all about the easy, fun, relaxing experience we make here. You see, Jordan, again, preserving the perfection of the eyes as much as possible. You can see I did go over the eyebrow. No worries, I'll just come back in and touch that up with my permanent marker. Because there is definitely bleeding right through. Okay. All right, so that's lovely. And we can add a little bit, you can leave it just like this if you want to keep it just very minimal. Or you can add just a teeny amount of that lovely brown that we mixed up and bring that in. While the paint is still wet, and create a little bit of shading off to the side there. Barely touch into it. While the paint's still wet, it's very key in this. But you get that nice soft blend. So if you feel like your paint is already set up and dry, and you're starting to push in that softly blended brown, then you're going to want to re-wet your creamy color first and make sure that you're transitioning from wet paint to wet paint, wet to wet. That's going to give you this nice, soft, blended look that occurs there with that little bit of very tiny touch of brown that comes in. So that's a beautiful look. We're going to go ahead and rinse out. We're going to start with this space set up and dry here. Now in my hat, I want some darker tones, a little bit more of the brown and the taupe. So I have some brown mixed up. I'm going to add a little bit more black to it and a little bit more white. So white and a little bit more yellow. Really lighten that up. So again, recap on how we achieve this. Brown, remember, is orange and black, equal parts. Then I just kept adding white to that to create this more of like a khaki look. And I add a little tiny touch of the primary yellow to pull that into that look. So this is what we're using for our hat. I'm going to go ahead and start to work this into the hat color here. Remember, water can be your friend. Just kind of tap it. It'll help really extend that paint into the surface area. I've got a long line here, so the hold on the brush again is more like you would hold a pencil, handle up. That gives you the thin line edge of the brush to make that nice straight line. And then when you want to fill in, you can kind of turn the hand a little bit more over to the side. This gets a little bit darker in here, so I'm going to wait and do that section here in a minute. Just doing the top parts of the hat, but this is like the underside of the hat here. We have a little patch up here, so I'm going to go around that. Corner there. I'm going to use a smaller brush for that here in a moment. Use that line of the brush. The section there. I'll switch over to a smaller brush in a second. Let's go ahead and rest in water a bit. We're going to switch over to our little bit brush. Do a little twirl here into the paint. That will load up the brush, but it also twirls the head of the brush into a nice fine point. So we have this little tiny section here. Here's that top corner of the hat. And we have this here. Forget about that. Beautiful. Okay, so we have this little undersection here, which becomes a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a little bit of black and brown. A little bit of a triangle that comes into the shape of the hat there. And underneath, a little bit of water to make this more fluid. More focused thin line there. Goes into the underside of the hat. And this little section here underneath. A little bit of a shadow happening on the other side. I want this to be a little bit darker. It's quite heavy. And then we can start to play a little bit with creases and shadows in the hat. So I've got my little bit brush, and we're just going to kind of, I've got a little bit of water added to it as well. So dip into the water, into that darker color. It's definitely more, on the consistency of it, more watery. So I'm just going to lightly kind of touch that. So it almost kind of looks like a little bit of watercolor. You can kind of change. Acrylic paint, super versatile. It can be thickened up and have a look that is like oil paint, or you can add a lot of water to it and it really takes on the characteristics of watercolor. It's very flexible medium. Yeah, white is my favorite medium. And it's also non-toxic, which is really nice. Option over here. Light little drags. you've got some water happening in there, so it just kind of gets an easier soft fade with the transition of the blending. And press and drag. Add a little bit of water to this to kind of soften out that transition. Very fun. Rinse out. And rinse out number two. Let's go ahead and start to get down a base coat with our sunflower here. Get that working. So we already have this beautiful cadmium yellow over here. So I'm going to go ahead and do another dollop of that. So we get some more primary yellow. Let's go back to our little bit brush. Put those two together. Very bold and bright. Let's go ahead and start to work into each one of those petals. We're just going to get the foundation of this sunflower going. And we have some little tiny points up here. We want to make sure and fill those in. Laying on pretty thick. Again, this is my cadmium yellow and permanent yellow. So the feel of each petal kind of feels like you make a parentheses, and that kind of tapers off to a nice fine point. And you can be a little bit sloppy with this intersection because we're going to be coming back over that with some texture and a darker, like blackish brown. And my permanent marker is holding up like a champ with a little bit of that bleed through. You still see the outlines of each one of the petals. And that's not always appreciated, but in this particular style of work, we do love it. And it allows us to be able to find our way again when we come back in and add the defining browns. Redefine these petals here in a moment. So in my style opinion, this is, again, this is not photorealism. This is more like folk art. It's got a very fun, cartoonish look to it. So we can lean into some of the line art being a little bit more pronounced. So obviously, if you're going for a different style, then those harsh lines can really interrupt your goals. But with this style of painting, it's actually going to be a blessing and help you, so you don't have to worry. Continue to work this in. Great. Love it. And this is our foundation. There we go. Okay. Now, let's add more Cadmium Orange. And a little bit of that fun brown can also be awesome. So you can start to use that. We're going to pull from that center. See how that works. The paint's still wet. So we're doing tiny little pulls. This is that brown that we already had mixed up. Just doing tiny little dashes or tiny little pulls from the center. It's creating some nice texture in there. We're going to do this all the way around. I'll follow the lead of the line mark. Rinse out just a little bit. Touch into a little bit of that orange. And get that cadmium yellow with that orange. Kind of soften it out. Make it a little more peachy. And that through the center. Just adding a little bit more texture to the sunflower. And the feel on each petal, again, it's like parentheses, parentheses. And then you can always come back in and brighten up again. More layers is always fine and good. I've got my primary yellow here. Go right into that. We're going to keep our brush light, our hand light, nice gentle touch. Let all that paint just kind of rest on the surface. And just doing a light touch of just that bright primary yellow again, right over the top. Very textural and fun. Looking very beautiful. Right, let's go ahead and rinse out. So when in Rome here, I've got a little bit of orange brush, so I'm going to go ahead and use my little bit brush in that orange, and we're going to go ahead and paint in our cute little crow here. Remember, if you have a little bit of overpaint, you can come back in and tighten that up with the Sharpie when you're done. I'm also going to create a little sweet nose here. That's going to require a little bit more of the red. So we have our Cadmium Red. There. Just grab some orange and some red. Those two together. I'm going to go ahead and use the line edge of the brush, so I hold it now with a pencil. And it's going straight up. Gives you more control and see using that line edge. brush. It's going to help us make this fun little triangle here. Now when I have to get better coverage over the surface, then I turn my handle more over to the side, parallel to the canvas. That is beautiful. You can also add little rosy cheeks if I want to with a lot more water, so I can rinse out. Let's make this really watery. So this is that red and orange that we mixed up, but I add a lot of water to it, makes it like watercolor consistency. Okay, see the texture. And then we're going to go ahead and do these fun little circles. We're going to spin the brush, push, and go in a circle. Fans out the brush. And half circles to each side. So push and spin in a half circle. Push and spin in a half circle. Rosy cheeks. A lot of water in here. Pure water. This one went a little bit darker. I just added pure water to it. Really nice. Let's go back to our little bit and that vibrant red and orange that we mixed up. I'm going to go ahead and just put in our cute little heart up here. Always rinse out. Remember, the acrylic paint will set up and dry on your brushes fairly quickly, so you want to always keep them clean or in the water resting until you get a chance to clean them. All right, let's do our little fun denim blue here. So I still have my primary cyan blue from before. Off to the side. And then with a little bit of that and a little bit of white, mix those two together, and that's just about perfect. That denim blue look that I want. A little bit of water. That'll help with those smooth lines. And water. Beautiful. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead. We're going to let that set up a little bit. Let's go ahead and work on our bandana here. So I'm going to run out of paint with our mix. I'm going to add a bit more of this cadmium red. Nice big dollop of that, pea size. You can add a little bit of hot pink to this too. We have a beautiful primary magenta in our kit here too, which is nice. So there's a little pea size amount there. Mix. This is my mama red. A little bit of water in there too. Extend the paint a bit more. You see how that's very, you get that dry brush happening. So you can add, again, a little bit of water to that. That'll really help it flow into the canvas. Really good coverage. So cutting work, hold it with that end of the brush pointed up. That gives you that nice fine line edge. Do the precision work. And then hold it more over to the side. I'm doing the big section of the bandana. Just give mom a brush, but you can see how when I get around the straw hair, I'm going to have to switch over to a smaller brush. Beautiful. Now it's going to feather out those brush strokes. A nice opaque finish over the top. It's really soft. Wow. Let's come back in with our little bit brush. We have that red and that primer, Magenta that we mixed up. And we're going to work on getting into the little details here in between the straw hair. Light touches in those small areas. Beautiful. All right, now let's work on our straw hair. So we still have a lot on our plate, but basically a little bit more of the primary yellow and white. Do another dollop of primary yellow. So a little white on our plate. So we're going to mix those two together. A lot of white. It's pretty light. You can make yours more yellow if you want it. So depending on the straw hair, like you might want a little bit brush to go into some of these small areas. I'm just using my little buddy, and then I'm also just adding some water to it so that it just kind of flows in over the top. I'm going to not worry about the cutting work or the line work. I'm going to do the magical trick of permanent marker here in a moment. And he's dry. Paint over that light primary yellow mixed with white. Again, a motto, fun and easy. Don't work too hard and don't have to. A little touch of that background, that's okay. It touches of pink and actually a little bit of that happening here too, so that's fine. And then all that straw hair, touch of it there, then overlap of it here, and then let's put it into the top. I'm going to be careful with my little crab here. So I'm going to come back in with my little bit brush. So let's go back to our little bit brush, into that, and come right next to that crow. Taking that straw just right around that cute little face. All right, so now, little bit brush, let's do a little twirl here into this bright primary yellow and white that we're just using on the straw. We're going to twirl into it, get a nice fine point, and we're going to do that little stitching that comes in around here. A little line. Just kind of feels like you do little dashes. Isn't that lovely? Just love it. All right, and then another little patch over here. Go ahead and work in. Let's do a tiny amount. Some green here, cadmium green. All right. Add a little bit of that brown to it to do it to more of a sage color. I haven't actually distributed this traceable yet. I must have forgotten it when I did it, so I'll make sure it's on my original traceable. We'll have that done for y'all. Y'all don't have to freehand. Square that comes out from the corner there. That's fine. Now here's a fun trick to do little dots. So you take your little bit brush and use the handle and dip into the black. See how it's there on the end? Just going to press down and it makes perfect little dots every time. So that's a fun little technique. That's also how we're going to do our freckles. So same little trick, a bit. A few little freckles here. Still see them because they show through with a trace that we did earlier. Permanent marker, beautiful thing. I'm just going to continue to place these in. As your paint's drying, watch your hand. Make sure you don't rest your hand into your wet paint. If you're a little concerned about it, of course, you can always take a little bit of break or a hair dryer. Take a little break and come back to it. As the paint will set up and dry pretty quickly. 5, 10, 15 minutes max. And so we have those cute little freckles done. If you want to do additional polka dot work, you certainly can. do a little white here, get that excess off. And cute. All right, a clean brush, little touch of white here. I've got a little bit of reflective light here on the nose. I'm going to do a tiny little dash right there on the nose. Okay. Also, if your reflective light in the eyes was disturbed at any point, I do recommend, this is such a delicate area, I take the permanent marker to help blacken anything. Also, I'll firm up. I just want to make sure that's completely dry, but I will come back and firm that up. But you can also take the technique we just did, white paint on the end, push down, makes those little flash points in the eyes. Has a lot of personality. Okay. Super cute. Just checking for my details here. I've got my little bit brush. I can do any little white highlights here. Barely touch the canvas, just a light drag. Echo pattern we have there. Now I'm adding a little bit of texture in here. This is a fun place to add texture, so I'm going to come back in with a little buddy brush. Dry off with clean, dry. Now let's come back in, do some more of that brown and black. Tap, tap, tap in the center. I'm tapping on the side of the brush. Tap, tap, tap. Or pure black now. I'll tap to add one of that circle. Make a perfect circle with a tap, tap, tap. Get some nice texture in there. Really nice. Now, I don't have it on the model, but it's a nice optional step that is in a lot of sunflowers. You can also add that little ring of texture. So I'm going to come back in with that Cadmium Orange. And we're going to tap, tap, tap and make a little donut here. So while the black is still wet, that way as you tap, 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 like softly bring them together. Well, that's a pretty look. Right, let's all dry off. Let's go back into that pure white. You can do just a tiny little bit of line work here. Just lightly drag it across here. Light drag, light drag. That little pocket, just a little detail. And dry off. Okay, so I need to let this all needs to set up and dry a little bit more. I can't really work with my permanent marker because I can still see that it is wet and it is ruin my Sharpie. So I can work on my hat. It is dry. So this is the beauty of the permanent marker to this area here. So I can make a little line. Outline the hat. Outline it here. So you've got that line work, the stitching. Careful with my foot. Same thing. We have a little bit of dash stitching here. And so you can feel that with a completely dry canvas, you could just be, you don't even have to be careful. If it's all completely set up and dry, then you can come back in here and not even have to worry about being super careful. And you can come back in and do all of this line work over the top. And it's a beautiful thing. You have a little bit of that triangle happens in the back here. See how it's really making the design pop? Love it. I'm going to move a little bit of my supplies here out of the way. Turn the canvas as needed so that I don't inadvertently place my arm into something. Paintwork here. The curve there. Outline there. I also have this line work here with the hat. And then this, we did this a long time ago, so this should all be really dry. So I've got the little smile curves here. And then we have a stitched smile here. And a little stitch marks here. Just little tiny dashes. This is so much easier to do with that permanent marking. It can, of course, be painted, but it's quite a bit more tedious and challenging. And you could run into black water runs and things like that. So again, my motto is fun and easy, and we just do it like this. So I've got my little outline that happens around the triangle here, the nose. It's all just like it's stitched on here. And I've got this little fine stitch marks. Very fun. And then we can start to reinforce the face shape here. I'm going to make sure my red is set up there first. I'm going to reinforce my eyes. Because we had a little bit of overpaint initially with the face. So we have a cute little eyelash there, a little soft curve. Okay. Come over this side, and turn it just a little bit. And we have our little eyelash. Eyelash. Eyelash, and we have our eyebrow here. And eyebrow here. Okay. I'm looking around to see where I can still work when it's dry. It's going to dry pretty quickly, so that's good. All right, so now I'm going to turn a little bit here. We've got the face shape that comes in here. Follow that all the way around. Okay. And now we can start to work in those little bits of hair, which is nice. So just follow that. See, this is all dry now. And this all kind of starts to make sense. It was looking a little strange before, but not anymore. With all those little lines. It just pops out now as the straw, but it is. A few little poking down here. Super cute. In here. See how lovely. Now you can also outline the sunflower if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine not outlined because I have it's a little bit of a different style popped into the painting, but I'm going to leave mine a little bit more raw and unfinished there. Just a different look. Little dashes here for the patch. But if you want that continuity of hard line over everything, you can do that if you want. You can outline every petal. I have a little bit of a mix going back and forth between the two. Like you can see, the bandana does not have a firm outline here. Neither does the sunflower. So, but again, that's up to you on that. You can come back in with a bit more detail or not. Make a few more little stitch marks here. And then I'm going to turn this because I'm going to finish out the straw up here. You've got this is our little crow, so it's got his body. I need to reinforce that. Make sure we round out that head again. Have that straw kind of poking out around him. So a little bit wet right in here, so I'm going to be real careful, just like drag around it. Turn this around. A bit of a hump there with that straw kind of coming over the top, just like that. Alright, so I'm doing a double check here. There's a lot of detail in this painting, making sure that I have finished out all my stitch marks and outlines. This is dry, so I can do a soft little outline here, the black over the top, and make that pop. And then I think that I like this. Yeah, just yeah, I think we are done. Kind of really picky, really few little details. Little outline on that heart kind of makes that pop out. It's nice. So that is beautiful. What a cutie pie. And then we can sign it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sign right here with my permanent marker. Ta-da! Tipsy Artist. Yay. Okay. All right, so we are done with our cute scarecrow. And as a recap, everything that you need is found at tipsyartist.com. I'll leave that in the description. And so it comes with a painting kit with all your supplies and a traceable. And of course, this online class will remain online for you to always use, and you can always just pause it and start it again, and however you need to use it that way, share it with your friends. But thank you again so much for painting with us today. We've had so much fun with y'all, and y'all have a beautiful rest of the day. See you soon. Toodles. Love y'all.